So you could buy a 5 Series BMW or an E-Class Mercedes-Benz or even an Audi A6, but they're all a bit predictable, aren't they? So have you ever considered buying a Jaguar XF instead? Maybe you haven't, because Jaguar have a terrible reputation when it comes to reliability. But we want to know, is there any truth to those accusations when it comes to the XF? Like, what actually goes wrong with these, and should you ever seriously consider buying one? Let's find out. Now, to set the scene here, in this video we're going to be focusing on the first generation, or the X250 XF, that was produced in the UK from 2007 to 2015. But there is so much more to talk about with this car, and honestly it can be very confusing. So let's decipher all that is the XF. Here in Australia, all X250 XFs will be sedans. However, some markets were treated to a wagon, or as Jaguar calls it, a sport brake. And locally, you're going to have the choice of 10 different power plants spread across 4, 6 and 8 cylinders, some turbo or supercharged, some not, some as diesels, others as not, all of which dictate the specific model designation of the XF. But all of their power outputs are going to vary depending on the year model and the trim spec and which way the wind is blowing. But they all send their power to the rear wheels via either a 6 or 8-speed automatic. And then you have no less than 12 different model designations to choose from, all of which will vary depending on the year model. And then you have the trim specs, which initially could consist of 5 levels, but that made way too much sense. So Jaguar then included the SV8, which was very similar to the top spec R, even though it's totally not. Oh, and there was also a limited edition 75th anniversary model. But then we come to the 2011 update that changes everything. But it doesn't. But it kind of does. Obviously there was the obligatory updates to features, tech and of course mechanical revisions, and visually the XF was treated to a facelift. But in terms of exactly what XF was available, forget 5 or is it 6 different trim levels? Jaguar increased the range to 7. But even then, this doesn't include the range of enhancement packs, which could be argued are so substantial they could be their very own variants. And we haven't even touched on the plethora of optional extras that were available. But if you do need all the intricate details of the XF, go to ReDriven.com and check out the awesome and completely free ReDriven cheat sheet. Basically, think of it as the like the ultimate used XF buyer's guide. Okay, now let's talk about the exterior for a moment. You know how like every role Margot Robbie is in, she absolutely smashes it, and anything Dave Grohl does is awesome? Well, the same can be said for car designer Ian Callum. I feel like every car he designs is like a masterclass in what a car should look like, and this is a great example. Remember, this thing's like 15 years old and it still looks bloody awesome. Actually, the post-update XFR, for me, might just be the sexiest looking sedan money can buy. Although, even though these look sexy, there are some issues with them, but we'll get to those soon. Now guys, if you hate ads in YouTube videos and you love to piss money down the drain, skip ahead now. But if you love to save money when you're buying your next car and get a free $250 fuel voucher, click on the link in the description down there, because that'll take you to Fast and Finance, and those guys will get you the best possible finance deal on your next car. Now inside, welcome to more design magnificence. Like, okay, it's aging a little bit, but it's aging really gracefully. I feel like if like Helen Mirren was a car interior, this would be it, because it's attractive and classy and nice to touch. I mean, the car interior. Like, even the materials used, there are no cheap, hard, scratchy plastics anywhere. Like down here, a lot of even premium car companies kind of cheap out down here, but this is all soft touch plastic. The leather is super supple and you can tell it's quality leather. Even on the steering wheel, like, it has lost a bit of its texture now, but it still feels nice. Up here, everything you touch feels great. Even the way things work, like opening these little trapdoors, like when you push that button down, there's a really nice tactility to that, and they open like nice and slowly, like you would expect classy things to open. It's such a bloody lovely place to be. But the real party piece is when you start it. Check this out. Watch this, watch the vents, watch the vents. Look at that. It just adds a bit of theatre to the whole thing. It's fantastic. Like, even the wood veneer in this particular model, it doesn't look cheap and nasty. It looks like it might actually be real timber veneer, because it looks real. Probably is real. But it's not all good news, because some of the switchgear just feels a bit cheap and nasty, and it's now kind of getting a bit creaky as well. And just, yeah, just there's a bit of movement at the station, and it's all a bit creaky. But back to good things, these seats are so comfortable, like lounge chair levels of comfortable, yet supportive if you want to have a bit of an enthusiastic drive. Fantastic seats up front. Now, practicality up front, you've got a little cubbyhole storage bin here with a USB charging port. You've got 2 cup holders just here. You've got a spot perfectly sized for the keys or knickknacks just there. You've got a glove box that there's no handle, but there is a handle. It's this little touch button that sometimes works. Good sized glove box there. And you've obviously got door bins that are perfectly sized for the new sexy ReDriven water bottle. How nice is that? ReDriven.com, jump on the merch store, buy these. Done. Now in the back seat, I'm exactly 7 centimetres taller than another sexy and classy Brit that enjoys a drive, Mr. Rowan Atkinson. This is in my driving position. Bloody fantastic back here. Heaps of knee room, heaps of foot room. The seats are super comfortable, heaps of headroom. God, it's a nice place to be. Although, I wouldn't want to be a middle seat passenger because the transmission tunnel is so huge, your knees are going to be up near your ears. Now, as far as wear and tear goes, it's interesting. The seats feel like they've never been sat in. The leather just feels incredible. The door cards are in fantastic condition. But the netting on the rears of the seats here, this one's kind of gone a bit loose and slack, like it's lost its elasticity, and this one's starting to peel off a little bit. So weird. But practicality in the back, speaking of the netting, you've got nets in case you want to go fishing and you need to store your fish somewhere. You've got your own air vents. You've got a spot here for, I don't know, the world's smallest mobile phone. You've got a power outlet there. You've got a pull-down armrest with 2 cup holders that are different sizes, so that's handy. And you also get the most pointless door pockets of all time. That's good for maybe a couple of golf balls, and that's about it. Now, practicality in the boot is an interesting one because there is heaps of space back here, but the actual aperture is quite small and there's a bit of a load lip, so that's annoying. But the good news is you can fold the seats down. I think, yes, you can fold the seats down. So as far as the tech and features goes, thanks to this car being available in several thousand different variants, all available over the 8 years of the production cycle, you could say that very few XFs will feature the same level and range of bells and whistles. And if you do need to know exactly what XF is equipped with which stuff, ReDriven.com, check out the cheat sheet, everything's on there. But at the very worst case scenario, a base model XF, so something from 2008, you're still going to get Bluetooth connectivity, dual zone climate control, a full leather interior, a pretty underwhelming 8-speaker stereo, and all of this and even more. But go hunting at the other end of the spectrum, so like a 2015 top spec portfolio fully optioned out, and you can expect to get like a 17-speaker Meridian sound system that sounds unbelievably good. You'll get premium leather, and you'll get like halo lighting, plus all of this and even more. Now, you may have noticed that there was a lack of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in that last bit, but the good news is all of that is easily fitted with aftermarket equipment. And you probably should fit aftermarket equipment because on the standard system, the Bluetooth kind of sucks, the sat-nav is terrible, the voice command system is shockingly bad, and just operating it in general can be a bit of a nightmare. Although one little thing I really do like, and I think a lot of manufacturers should take this on board, there's a little ledge here to like lean your hand on, so when you're touching the screen, you've got like a point of reference, otherwise you're just kind of trying to hit it on bumps. It doesn't work. That's pretty good. Now, as far as safety goes, look, the XF is loaded with equipment, but it is a little bit behind the times versus what we expect in this category of car these days. But to take you through exactly what safety features this has, we're going to keep up the classy English theme and give you a very English voiceover.
The Jaguar XF features a whole host of airbags, ABS, corner braking control, ESC, traction control, and to keep those outside the simply sumptuous cabin safe, a pedestrian impact system. However, even in later models, the big Jaguar misses out on much of the latest active safety kit. Still, isn't she a looker?
And again, guys, for the full breakdown of all the details, ReDriven.com, check out the cheat sheet. It'll answer all your questions. Now, because the XF is available in such an enormously wide range of different flavours, it's nearly impossible to kind of wrap up the driving experience of such a huge range with just one example. But all you need to know is, even after all of these years and tens of thousands of kilometres, this thing is still utterly wonderful to drive. Like, honestly, it makes you feel just good. It makes you feel like a good human. It somehow blends kind of luxury with genuine driver involvement. And unlike some of the other cars in this class, this thing doesn't make you feel arrogant either. Like with some of those other cars, when you drive past people, you kind of get this feeling of like, oh, I'm so much better than the commoners out there. This doesn't. Like, it's somehow friendly yet upper class all at the same time. Now, for the car nerds out there, this is the naturally aspirated V6 and it gets along great. It's so smooth, plus it's so responsive. Even the suspension, it still feels great. It feels secure and confident. It's great. Like even the handling, like it responds really nicely. It sits flat, it gives you confidence. It is, okay, maybe a touch on the firm side, but it still does exactly what a car like this should do. Look, overall, this thing is just such a pleasure to drive. I love driving it, but it also breaks my heart because we're shortly going to be getting into the what goes wrong with it section. So even though it's a fantastic driving experience, it might not be a great ownership experience. Now, with the pricing of these things, as you can see, kicking off from around about $15,000, it might seem like the bargain of the century, but we haven't covered what goes wrong with them yet, so let's not start throwing any big statements around about value for money. Also, it's one thing to be able to afford to buy a Jaguar XF, but can you afford to maintain a Jaguar XF? Because guys, Jaguar parts, European parts, they're not going to be cheap. When it comes to fuel consumption, through our research, we found that many owners are actually claiming pretty good fuel consumption on like the diesels and the V6s. However, if you're looking at buying one of the V8s, you might want to remortgage your house because, yeah, paying for the fuel, it's going to get bloody expensive. Firstly, a massive thank you to everybody in the Jaguar XF community for helping us research this video. Honestly, without your knowledge and expertise, we couldn't make these videos, so thank you guys so much. Secondly, are you comfy? Because this what goes wrong section, it may go for a little while. Sorry. Firstly, there are plenty of reports that some of the alloy wheel designs can crack pretty easily, mainly after 65,000 Ks. They shouldn't crack at all. Next up, the wiring loom for the boot can have major issues, and unfortunately it takes out the tail lights, the number plate lights, the reversing camera, and even the boot mechanism. The door locks, or the actuators, they're known to fail. The windscreens are known to delaminate, and the washer bottle is known to leak. That doesn't seem like that big of a deal until you find out that the water leaks through the firewall into the passenger side footwell and eventually gets into the fuse box. I don't need to explain that water and electronics don't like to mix. The power window regulators are known to fail randomly. And then XFs that are fitted with a sunroof, that sunroof is known to creak and rattle and make all sorts of horrible sounds. And then this chrome treatment around the windows, it's known to get milky, exactly like this one, and you can replace them, but you know, Jaguar parts, going to be expensive. Then, because these are becoming far more affordable, there are some concerns about any accident repairs being done on the cheap, so it is critical to look for any dodgy accident repairs. Actually, there's a whole bunch of other critical things that you need to check out on these cars. To make that whole process so much easier, we've made the ultimate used car buyer's guide just up there. Guys, please watch that before you buy one of these, or really any used car, because it could save you a fortune. Now inside, I'm sorry, but things potentially get worse. You ready? Here we go. First up, there are plenty of reports that the touch screen just shows a blank screen, or at best just the Jaguar logo. The problem is the entire infotainment system has to be reprogrammed. Actually, just on infotainment systems, these things can suffer all sorts of problems, and it's often because water can get in under the front passenger seat. Okay, next up, the overhead reading lights. They can flash and flicker because apparently the connectors corrode prematurely, or maybe it's because the car's haunted. Oh, also the lights on the instrument cluster, they're known to go and glitch out and do the same thing. The very cool gear selector knob that raises up out of the center console when you start the car sometimes doesn't raise up. That means you can't select drive or reverse and therefore can't go anywhere. The leather on top of the dashboard, especially closer to the bonnet, it can kind of lose adhesion and start to get wavy, and in really hot climates, like here in Australia, it can start to peel back like a comb over. Nobody wants a comb over. The very cool HVAC vents that kind of open when you start the car, very cool, but the little motors that run them, they have a habit of failing and therefore they don't open. Look, honestly, anything that has electricity running to it in this interior, which is pretty much the entire interior, short of the wood grain trim and the leather, has problems associated with it. It's just a cacophony of electrical gremlins all the time. Now, before we get into mechanically what goes wrong with these, and my God, that's going to be interesting, can I ask a favor? Can you hit that like and subscribe button? Honestly, just those two little clicks, it helps us out so much. We'd appreciate it so much. Okay, here we go. Mechanically, what goes wrong with these? I can't tell you. I'm not a mechanic, but Jim is.
The 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol in these, well, that's the Ford EcoBoost engine. And out of the EcoBoost family, it's pretty good motor all around. It is better than the 2.3 litre that's used in the RS Focus and the Mustang because it's got a closed deck, not an open deck. And that just tends to make things a bit stronger and more reliable. The 2.2 litre turbo diesel in these, well, it's a Ford engine as well. It's the Ford Duratorque, which is basically the same as the Ford Mondeo engine. It does have a timing belt, and that has to be changed every 180,000 Ks, although we would recommend doing that every 150,000 Ks to be safe. There's also a secondary timing chain inside the head that drives the cams. It is known to slip, and when it does, it breaks rocker arms and bends valves. Now, it's not a maintenance item, and there's no real sign of if and when it's going to fail, so basically, yeah, just good luck with that one. The V6 diesel, well, that's another Ford engine, and it has a lot of well-known and well-documented problems. Turbo problems, EGR complications, and high-pressure fuel system issues. Split manifolds and leaking oil coolers. And coolant leaks from water pumps and thermostat housings are pretty common. And the big one, bottom end failure. Big end bearing and main bearing failure is pretty common in these compared to other cars. And when that happens, that typically means a whole new engine, which ain't pretty, nor cheap. The ongoing running costs of these engines are pushed up by the timing belt requirements. It has to be changed every 165,000 Ks, as does the high pressure fuel pump belt. The V6 and the V8 petrol engines, now I'm going to group them together because they actually share a lot of components. They also share a lot of problems. Fun fact, the V6 block is basically the same casting as the V8 block, just with the back two cylinders blanked off, which honestly, I just think that's cheap and weird. The most common problem with these engines is timing chain related. Well, more importantly, the timing chain tensioners and guides. When they wear, the timing chain fails and causes complete and utter valve train annihilation. A less serious problem is the supercharger coupling. It doesn't fail catastrophically, but just makes a terrible noise, and you will have to do that at some point. The cooling system on these engines is pretty fragile. Water pump leaks are common, thermostat housing leaks are common, and everything made of plastic has a tendency to split and leak, which is a lot of the cooling system. It's all plastic. The key to reducing the likelihood of serious internal engine damage is servicing. Now, a lot of people think they're doing the right thing when they service these, but a lot of these have service intervals of 26,000 kilometres. Now, no engine, even with the best long life oil available, is ever going to last with that sort of ridiculous service schedule. If you want it to last and you're planning on keeping it for a long time, just service it every 10,000 Ks and it will massively reduce the likelihood of problems. The transmission in these, that's the ZF Auto, which is in a lot of rear-wheel drive applications, BMWs and some Ram trucks too. Overall, pretty good, pretty reliable. They do have the occasional valve body issue or clutch complication. Again, the key here is servicing. They have a service schedule of 230,000 Ks, which is utter madness. Do it every 100,000 Ks, or if you really want it to last, just do it every 50,000 Ks. Look, overall, and I know Adam loves his car, but basically from a mechanical perspective, they're not that good, really.
Now look guys, we know that sounds like a whole lot of doom and gloom, but you need to know there are owners out there, exactly like Carl that owns this particular car, that have never had an issue with them. And even though JLR or Jaguar Land Rover products often do feel the really horrible end of a lot of consumer and reliability surveys, there are unicorn examples out there that just don't have problems. Okay, so should you buy one? I think we all know the answer to this one. For the majority of us, no, of course not. The longest part of this video was the what goes wrong section, and even then we didn't mention everything that we dug up on the XF, otherwise this video would have gone for hours. And then add to that fixing these issues will most likely be expensive, and for the vast majority of us, as sexy as the XF is, it simply just doesn't make financial sense. But for a very select few of us, if you really, really, really want one, yeah, sure, you should buy an XF. See, for the fans, cars like the XF, they aren't about reliability or the cost of upkeep or, well, logic. They're about how a car makes you feel, the romance, the experience, and this is where the Jaguar shines. Look, if you're happy to accept that the XF is very far from perfect and you're in the financial position to pay for the upkeep and deal with all the ongoing issues, then yeah, sure, you should buy one. But the big issue that the XF has is its competition. See, there's another car in this class that does all of the lovely subjective stuff just as well as this, while also being proven to be objectively far more reliable, and it's not European, it's Japanese, it's the Lexus GS. Which then brings us to the question, do you make the silly financial decision yet bathe yourself in all of that Euro goodness and buy the Jag or a BMW or a Merc or an Audi, or do you make the financially smart decision and buy the Lexus? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. but all of their power outputs will vary depending on the year model. Sorry about that.
It is known for slipping and then causing,
Okay, firstly, a massive thank you to everybody in the Jaguar XF, and also the washer bottle that holds the water. They're known to leak. That doesn't seem like a big problem, and it's